Hey, what's up you guys? You're watching Team APS, Paul here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about trap cards and whether or not they're still relevant in Yu-Gi-Oh! Let's get started. So to be fair, this actually is a question that's always kind of been around, are trap cards not good anymore? Are they just too slow to keep up? Has the power creep and the meta just kind of pushed them out of the picture? And so, like it's not like a 2016 problem. But the reason why I bring it up now is because I have like three sort of specific examples, I think, that really show just how trap cards feel like what they've been relegated to right now. So, the first, okay, like I think traps basically get played in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now if they fulfill one of three criteria. One, they're a trap hole card, thus Rafflesia can use them from the deck. So that means they don't have to be searched, they just have to be included in your deck, and you can trap hole your opponent from the deck with bottomless or time space or, whatever trap hole cards. There's like new ones coming out. So yeah, second criteria. If the trap is a counter trap, thus is searchable by Guiding Ariadne. So if you're running a pendulum deck, you can run Guiding Ariadne and search, Solemn Strike and Solemn Warning and Solemn Scolding. And, those are all counter traps, thus they're very powerful. And the third thing is if the trap card is just an archetype specific trap that you kind of need to run. So my example is always the Phantom Knights of Fogblade, because it's just sort of a better Fiendish Chain. It's searchable for them, and when it leaves the field, it can float. So yeah, so let's kind of break each of these down, right? So what do these all have in common? Basically, the idea that you never actually have to draw trap cards. It really goes to show that traps in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now are too slow to just use in the conventional way they're meant to be used. It's too slow to simply draw your traps, set them, and hope that they work. They have to be searchable or usable from your deck, or just be part of your archetype where they have some other benefits and synergy. And, I think that that's really, that's a real shame, because there are some really cool trap cards that used to be so relevant and so powerful, and now they've just been relegated to third tier status. So, like I think of things like Compulsory Evacuation Device and Dimensional Prison and Torrential Tribute, Mirror Force 2. I'm actually going to get into Mirror Force a bit more in a second, but all of these traps are just not relevant. This looks really cool in my eyes, but it's also kind of weird. Anyway, yeah, so traps, in my opinion, feel very like it's just gotten to the point where they have to be super efficient to be useful. We don't get the old traps. And I think maybe a fourth reason that traps aren't good is because so many monsters seem immune to them. Like, this or that can't be targeted. We all know about, the whole Dark Destroyer thing, but also, just in general, it feels as though more and more monsters can't be affected by like Compulsory Evacuation Device or D-Prison, and more monsters float to a point where, Mirror Force isn't useful. And, when I think about Mirror Force, so let's get into that for a bit. There have been so many new Mirror Forces. We've got the Quaking Mirror Force and the Drowning Mirror Force and Burning and Storming, and it's just kind of like, 5, 6 or more years ago, the idea of some of these new Mirror Force cards would have been unheard of. It would have been considered completely unfair and unbalanced. Like, a Mirror Force that bounces everything in the hand, and a Mirror Force that flips it all face down and stops it from ever coming back face up. And then like Drowning Mirror Force, Mirror Force where you get attacked directly and everything goes straight back to the deck. That would have never worked years ago. That would have been insanely powerful. I mean, remember, Mirror Force is a card that was for a very long time limited and highly sought after, and if you had a copy, you definitely ran it because it was so powerful. But now the monsters float so much, and they're so just resistant to Mirror Force's power that Konami has had to make stronger Mirror Forces. And even the stronger Mirror Forces aren't really played that much except in a few niche decks. And, that really goes to show, like, I know, Psy-Frames and Senju tend to play like Drowning Mirror Force and stuff like Quaking Mirror Force, things like that, to kind of slow the opponent down. And, I've seen like a few other slower paced decks make use of some of them, but it's a real shame that Mirror Force has gotten to the point where it's just not usable. And it's probably more or less because it's not searchable. And, when I think about it, Traptrix Myrmilio, for its time, like around in 2014 and some in 2015, made, the trap hole card searchable, so that kept them relevant. But I mean, nowadays we've just moved on to the point where no one runs Traptrix Myrmilio. She's too slow, but if you can make Rafflesia, then you're fine, because Rafflesia can literally, she doesn't have to search your trap cards at all. She can literally use them from the deck. And it's just like, I don't know if this is intentional. I don't know if it's just Konami having to cover their tracks and desperately try to find ways to keep traps relevant. But I think it's a bit of a shame that we can't use... Being outside is so scary sometimes. It's just strange that we can't use, old traps at all. I remember a time when not just Mirror Force, but Deep Prison was highly feared. The fact that, banished a monster, it made it comparable to Mirror Force, because even though you got rid of only one monster, you banished it. So it was like an out to Stardust or something like that. But now we're just at a point where, these cards, like the boss monsters and things, are just too powerful and too resilient to traps, and I never thought we would get to that point. But when I think about it, it's like, where can traps become relevant again? Like, are we just at a point where the game is too fast and it couldn't be slowed down to bring traps back? I mean, like, there are obviously going to be super powerful traps that will always be banned, like, Imperial Order and stuff, but those to me are less of traps and more of just like, the typical floodgate. So I guess what I should say is this video doesn't really include, floodgates. Obviously, anti-spell fragrance and, cards like that will always be good traps, or at least most of them. But really, I just mean like the idea of battle traps. The fact that, the battle phase traps, that they're too slow, that you need instant, removal, or it's something very powerful. The fact that mirror forces and things aren't a thing anymore. Even Fiendish Chain is barely played, and that really says something. So I just have to wonder, could the format slow down enough for traps to come back? And I'm not really sure. I mean, I'd like to think that, with stuff like Cosmos and Monarchs out of the picture, and maybe Burning Abyss, that, yeah, like possibly, but, I look at the Dark Illusion and kind of what's to come, and it's like, well, it might not really get any better. So, yeah, it's strange to me that traps have come down to basically having to be searchable or usable in some other way instantly in order to be remotely useful. It's sad because they're still a cornerstone of the game. There's still monsters, spells, traps, but it feels like traps are getting pushed out of the picture. So I want to know what you guys think. Do you guys think that trap cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are dead and just aren't relevant anymore? Do you think that they could come back? Or am I just kind of overthinking it? Am I wrong? Are traps still totally useful? I mean, I know that for a lot of lower tier decks, they're still a necessity in order to just kind of have that defense and be able to keep up. But, high tier decks really aren't using them. And I guess that's always kind of been a thing, like the top tier decks and the faster decks just tend not to use traps. But I feel like especially now, traps are have been relegated to just second tier card status. So really interesting discussion, I think, and something I want to hear you guys' opinions on, because it's I don't know. I mean, like, it's like I said, this is a topic that's come up plenty of times before. This isn't like a new question in 2016. It's just one that I really noticed. I had a conversation with a friend about, whether, like, how it seems like traps have to function in today's game. And when I look back, it's really true, Like I said, it either has to be a trap hold that's usable by Rafflesia instantly, a counter trap that is searchable by Ariadne and is very powerful on its own, like, Solemn Strike, or like, Fogblade, a power crept Fiendish Chain that is archetype specific, searchable, and floats. And that, I don't know. So anyway, that's the video. Hope you guys liked it. Remember, in the comments, leave your opinions on traps. Do you think that they're dead, or just barely hanging on, barely keeping up? How could they become relevant again? And I think that's gonna be it. So I've gone on long enough. Follow me on social media. Subscribe if you want to see more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. I upload new stuff Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I think that's gonna be it. Also, I'm giving away a box of the Dark Illusions this month. This giveaway is sponsored by TCGplayer, so check it out in the description if you want a chance to win. And I think that's gonna be it. So bye, guys.